Coming up on Theater Talk.
There are certain rituals that whenever I attend a wedding, gay or straight, they always feel sort of doomed to me. That's just me. You know, I do always get the sense of, oh my God, this is the last moment that they'll...
Of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. But that tends to be in proportion to the amount of money spent on the ceremony.
That's right.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Of the announcement. Michael Finkelstein and Dr. Todd Williams Sonoma Outlet were married earlier today on stage at Radio City Music Hall during the Tony Awards by the Pope. His Holiness told Mr. Finkelstein, "Your mother has convinced me that I was wrong about gay marriage."
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's executive producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. Well, Susan, New York State has finally passed a law making gay marriage legal in the
So
in
you've
state.
been telling me.
So I've been telling you, because you know I'm up on all the new political social movements. And sort of in honor of that, I think, and also to push gay marriage around the country, there's a fascinating new collection of plays about gay marriage called Standing on Ceremony. That's opening at the Minetta Lane Theatre. And we are delighted tonight to be joined by three people who have written some of the plays. We are joined for the first time on Theater Talk by José Rivera, whose play is called Pablo and Andrew at the Altar of Words. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you very much.
Moisés Kaufman, who we've had on the show a couple of times, but it's been too long, Moisés.
Nice to see you again.
Welcome back. And your play is London Mosquitoes. And our old regular, who's been a ham bone on this show for years, who always makes us laugh, the great, great Paul Rudnick, whose play is called The Gay Agenda. Welcome back to Theater Talk,
Thank
Paul.
you.
I wanted to ask you guys, a few years ago, Susan and I interviewed...
John Waters.
We interviewed John Waters. And John Waters said when he was growing up as a young gay man, he said, you know, 3 things I never wanted to do: go into the Army, have children, and get married. And now it's all changed. When you guys were growing up, the idea of gay marriage, Paul, was it anywhere around?
No, it was nowhere on the radar. And it's funny because I also was never even that keen on straight marriage. But it is interesting how the speed of social change now, and gradually actual political and legal change as well, because you think the leap from just any kind of gay awareness and gay civil rights to suddenly gay marriage seeming less and less like a punchline, you know, and less like a fantasy. So no, it did not enter my consciousness whatsoever, which I think is kind of fascinating because now there's also a sense that it's become almost mandatory,
Yes.
you know, which is why it's a juicy topic, because you think it's a very basic civil right, but should everyone avail themselves of it?
What's interesting also is what happens to people who've been together 20, 30, 40 years.
Yes.
You know, then you get married, and then what does that say of the last 30 years that you were together? What have you been doing? Playing Scrabble?
Yeah.
You know, what is that time? And so it's interesting because as we are, of course, all delighted that this is possible, we are forced to really think about what that means not only for people who now have the opportunity, but people who have been in relationships for a long time.
Jose, what do you think, as Paul was saying, that suddenly this social change has happened so quickly? I mean, if you look at the history of homosexuality in America, what is it in the last few years you think that has finally pushed it along?
Well, I think, certain works of art, obviously Angels in America helped a great deal. The Normal Heart, I think that helped to put the consciousness in the forefront as to change. I think that, and I also think in a weird way, because I grew up on Long Island in the 60s and 70s, and it was a very homophobic and racist place to live. And I just thought that was America. And I've seen as I've grown older that, it's something has softened in the American character. I think it's generally less homophobic, less racist than it used to be. And I think it's sort of as if we were evolving, as a species. And I think that's, in a way, what we see happening.
One of the interesting things about some of the old gay plays, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I always thought was that they couldn't be open about being gay. And that gave it this kind of interesting intensity. Now that everything's out in the open. Is gay writing going to lose its fire and its fuel, Paul?
Well, no, but I think a lot of it has become far more domestic because there were, well, also I think the other thing that's, as Jose was mentioning, that accounts for an enormous leap in gay visibility, and if it could be said to have had any advantage, was the AIDS crisis, that really made gay lives a fact and something that was unavoidable and something that suddenly was on the national agenda. Although actually what's in my piece in this evening, something that's interested me now is even people on the farthest far right and religious fundamentalists who object to gay marriage and to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, have learned if they are open about those opinions, even their own base will kind of reject them. They sound so nasty and so mean-spirited, and they've learned to cloak it and sugarcoat it now in the language of the left. So they will always say, and this is what sort of inspired my piece, was they'll say, if you have a Michelle Bachmann or a Maggie Gallagher, they'll say that gayness is an illness and it's the work of Satan and that it imperils the American family. And then they'll always say, but I don't hate anyone. I would say, well, what is your definition of hatred?
And your play, The Gay Agenda, is a right-wing woman who's opposed to
like
gay
that. And I really actually tried to have a certain compassion for her because I think whenever it's like during the Proposition 8 trial in California where they refused to have it televised because the very few people who they could get to testify against gay marriage and against any form of gay equality were suddenly very nervous. And you think, wait, if you really believe what you're saying, if you really think of it as not as prejudice but as fact, then why aren't you more open about it? Still, there's a kernel of sympathy for someone whose world has been so rocked, who's been so changed, who feels that something is being taken from them.
Right.
You know, and that sense of, wait, I had a notion of the family and of marriage and of the sanctity of all these institutions, and now somebody's tampering with that. And I can understand how that might be a bit unnerving. You should also then hopefully become open-minded. But I did want to not just write something that was an attack on someone like that, but to sort of see it from their side.
And your play, Jose, what's the crux of it and what inspired you?
Yeah, it's, well, first of all, I was very surprised when I was asked to write the play, because I'm not gay, and I feel a bit like an imposter.
Get out.
No, you didn't tell me, Susan, for God's sake.
But I thought
Well, he and I didn't discuss it.
we didn't talk about that.
Why did you let him write the play, for heaven's sake?
Well, no, the correct way is to say he's not gay yet.
Okay. Yes, ask me in an hour.
Stick around at the Senate Theater talking.
No, so when I was asked to write it, I was very honored, and I thought, well, okay, as a man sort of outside of the experience, what could I create that would have something to say about the experience itself? And so what my play, Pablo and Andrew, is two men who are at the altar, and the whole play is their vows. And they wrote them themselves, and they improvise a little bit as they say their vows. But I thought it would be interesting just to talk about, in the play, a kind of universal quality of love. That when two people declare love, no matter who they are with their background, the language tends to be of a certain kind. And not that all love or wedding vows sound the same, but I thought that these vows written by a straight man would be applicable to anybody who was in love, because the quality of love to me has no gender.
And Moisés, you touched on what your play's about, but if you just give us a deeper sense.
It's about a 70-year-old man who has just lost his longtime companion, and he's giving a eulogy. And he's giving a eulogy in the eve when there's this big march outside about gay marriage. And he's forced to say, well, were we married or were we not married? One thing about what Paul said that I find really interesting is that, like, in terms of most civil rights movements, you always begin with language, right? People immediately know what it's okay and not okay to say. And then from there, it goes down, and then it becomes language, action, belief. But it always follows that. And it was very interesting because they did a poll, and 60% of Americans over 40 years old are against gay marriage, 60%. But when they did the same poll in Americans under 40 years, 60% of Americans under 40 years are for gay marriage.
Right.
So the numbers completely swap.
reversed. Very
So, hopefully the arc of history does tend towards progress.
And in your play, this man is saying, we can have marriage now, what have we had before?
That's it, yeah.
So
he talks about that.
He's ambivalent about gay
No. He's talking about how does he measure, like what, now that marriage is possible, what language does he is left to talk about his experience with this man for 40 years?
Right.
But that raises a good issue. I remember years ago watching this classic documentary about the gay world, Word Is Out. And you had aging homosexuals saying they miss the days of being the renegade. They miss the days of where there was a sort of a more, I don't know, closed society, and that secret world, and that copying to the system of marriage, legitimizing your union, wasn't what they were looking for.
Well, Vito Russo, who was a real gay
Yes.
pioneer and who created the Celluloid Closet and studied gay cinema, he said that I forget the exact quote, but I'm paraphrasing that, he said that at that time, many decades ago, that being gay was a very secret little world, and he said someday we're going to miss that world. And I completely understand what he means, but it was said with a certain ruefulness and a sense that, of course, progress entailed far greater visibility and the loss of certain secret codes that was inevitable. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been with the same.
You've straddled both worlds, though, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been with the same guy for almost 18 years now.
Right.
Although I do remember my late beloved mother because my partner John, he did get a tattoo on his shoulder of a heart with a bleeding dagger through it and my name on it.
Oh, that's
And when I told my mom that he had done this, she thought about it for a moment and she said, well, that she approved. And I said, why? And she said, because you can take a ring off. And I thought, my God, that required several steps of thought.
That's lovely.
And she meant it. And I thought it was very oddly romantic and no nonsense.
Can I ask you, will you get married?
We have talked about it, but there's never been. Now we're feeling a certain social pressure. But we
to have the party.
Well, or just that sense of, are you not a good homosexual if you don't toe the party line now? But I think Rachel Maddow actually was sort of questioned recently when she said that she didn't feel she completely believed in marriage as a basic civil right for everyone, gay and straight alike, but that she didn't feel any great personal urgency, even though she's been with her partner for quite some time. So yeah, so it's fun. I mean, it's a good problem to have, I don't think anyone can complain about it. So, and there are certain vast legal advantages to being married. But on the other hand, yeah, we kind of were fine the way we were. So I don't know. We'll see if we get around to it.
You're still a renegade, I know it.
Well, also there's how you feel about. There are certain rituals that whenever I attend a wedding, gay or straight, they always feel sort of doomed to me. That's just me. I do always get the sense of, oh my God, this is the last moment that they'll...
Of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. But that tends to be in proportion to the amount of money spent on the ceremony.
That's right. And you, Moisés, not that we're prying your private life, but do you have a partner, and are you going to get married?
I've had a partner for 23 years.
Wow.
And we will get married when it's legal in the country.
In the country.
So we're waiting for that.
Waiting, right. And Jose, you are...
I'm married.
You're straight.
I'm straight.
Jose's straight.
Still for another 20 minutes.
Yes, I'm actually on my second straight marriage.
But I do want to ask you, because you're all fine writers, what was the play, novel that had a gay theme that had the biggest impact on you when you were growing up, where you thought, this is who I am, or this is a world that I'm interested in?
Well, it's funny because you get into issues of gay sensibility then, where there were writers, everyone from Oscar Wilde to Patrick Dennis, who wrote Anti-Mame, and I read all of his books, some of which actually have gay content, especially as time went on. But there was certainly a tone that I identified with and celebrated and enjoyed. And then there was the emergence of an actual gay literature with books, everything from Dancer from the Dance and Larry Kramer's Faggots, and those which I remember devouring just because there was so little else out
And
there.
The Naked Civil Servant, the Quentin.
Yes, exactly.
And Moisés, a particular, when you were growing up?
I think for me, a real important moment in my growing up was watching Torch Song Trilogy. I grew up in a very Orthodox Jewish home in Caracas, Venezuela, which is a very Catholic and machista country. So I thought I was the only homosexual in the world. When I found the word homosexual in the dictionary, I was thrilled because I thought, there must be one other homosexual because there's a word for it. I thought it was Mr. Merriam-Webster who was the homosexual who had written it. But
I think he may have been, actually.
He may have been Marion. You name a child Marion. But what ended up happening is that I ended up watching Torch Song Trilogy.
The movie, or you saw the play?
The play. And I remember thinking, in that play there's a a drag queen, there's a straight acting gay man, there's a 15-year-old gay boy, and you're like, oh, you can be any of those things. And all of a sudden there were like all of this, that being gay didn't mean one thing, it meant all of those things. And all of a sudden a world opened up. It was life-saving.
And Jose, I mean, I know you're straight, but was there a particular play that...
There was actually, Torch Song was obviously huge for everyone who saw it in the theater. But for me, actually, the novel Last Exit to Brooklyn, which had...
Selby, right?
Yeah, Hubert Selby Jr. And there's a gay character there who is straight, and or he's married. And there was just passages of this unbelievable angst and torture as he's trying to sort of be a straight man, sort of counter to everything inside his body. And I thought it was so moving and so heartbreaking that was, for me, one of the most pivotal things I'd read.
For me, it was Al Pacino in Cruisin'. Remember that one?
Clearly. The worst possible gay role model.
All right, the play is Standing on Ceremony, the Gay Marriage Plays at the Minetta Lane Theatre. Paul Rudnick, our old friend, his play is The Gay Agenda. Moisés Kaufman's play is London Mosquitoes. And José Rivera, our new friend here on Theater Talk, his play is Pablo and Andro at the Altar of Words.
And Jose, your Academy Award nominated film, The Motorcycle Diaries, is out in DVD. And
Oh, good.
highly recommend it.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being our guest on Theater
Thank
Talk.
you so much.
Thank you.
We now pronounce you
Fully and completely. Absolutely.
and legally married.
Use at your own risk. English writing firm. Currently enter through the back door. Thai wife sister, open door. So, will not close. Now you know.
You know, Susan, I'm always saying when I come back from London that the British playwrights tackle the issues of the day, and many of our American writers don't. So I am thrilled that on Broadway is an absolutely fascinating new play called Chinglish that deals with the cross-cultural currents and misunderstandings of America and China. It could not be a hotter topic. And here to talk about this fine play tonight is the writer, David Henry Hwang. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on really writing a play that has got an audience laughing, but also thinking about these big, big issues. What was the inspiration for this play?
You know, I've been going to China a fair amount over the past 5 or 6 years. The first time I went was in the 90s, but then I started going because China's very interested in Broadway-style shows. And I happen to be the only even nominally Chinese person who's ever written a Broadway show. So I would just get all these calls to come over and discuss these huge projects. You know, we're going to build a theater district in Shanghai or something. And they all came to nothing, except that it gave me an opportunity to really see the amazing kind of changes that are going over there right now. And I started to think about writing a play about doing business in China. But so much of that experience is about language, especially when, you know, if you're an American, you don't speak Chinese, you go over there, and you've got to deal with the language barrier. And I'd never seen a play or a movie that really tackled that. We usually come up with some sort of convention, like the character who doesn't speak English speaks English with an accent.
Right.
But that doesn't convey it at all. So I wanted to write kind of a bilingual play.
And it's in Mandarin. The Chinese people speak.
Yeah, the
Mandarin.
characters who would speak Mandarin do speak Mandarin. The play's about a quarter in Mandarin, but we, you know, obviously we project the English translations right onto the set for those of you who don't speak Mandarin, which includes me, by the way.
Oh, you don't speak Mandarin?
I'm not bilingual. That was the, you know, that was a challenge because I wanted to write it.
How did you do that then?
Well, there's I have a translator who's a major playwright in Hong Kong named Candace Chong. And I'd met her at the Lark Play Development Center maybe 10 years ago. She was in New York on a grant from the Asian Cultural Council, and we became friends. So I emailed her in Hong Kong, and I said, will you work on this with me? And she agreed, and she's, you know, been with the project ever since.
Because we should say the play's very funny, too, because as we're waiting for the translation, as the translators are translating English into Mandarin to their bosses, the way they change meanings and phrases and misinterpret things is really quite brilliant.
Well, I mean, thanks. I mean, I think that's really the experience of having a translator. One of the things that the American character says at the beginning is, he learned that you should always bring your own translator because you don't know what your translator is saying. So, for instance, at the first big meeting in the play, the American says, I run a small family-owned firm, and the translator translates it, his company is small and insignificant. And then it just goes downhill from there.
Absolutely.
Well, another thing you deal with is the remarkable difference in protocol between that when one goes to China to do business, one must observe certain mores that we don't have in our culture and can be completely baffling. What was the most surprising thing you discovered when you started to do business in China?
One of the things that sort of startled me is that people answering their cell phones in the middle of meetings. So,
I get that in the middle of TV shows.
Yeah, but here in America,
the middle of the theater.
But here in America, at least we try to make it go to voicemail,
yes.
Or if we're going to take the call, we go outside the room.
Right.
Whereas in China, the cell phone rings, and they just kind of pick it up and they start talking in the middle of the meeting. So then you've got these sort of parallel conversations going on, or people, if it's an important person, then everybody waits for them to have their phone call and order their lunch or whatever it is they're doing.
It's not seen as rudeness.
It's not. We did a scene from the show at something called the Global China Summit that the Washington Post held a couple of weeks ago. And besides our excerpt, Henry Kissinger spoke. And so Kissinger was giving his speech. Some Chinese guy's cell phone goes off. He picks it up. He starts having his conversation. He's, maybe about 100 feet away from Kissinger. I guess Kissinger is used to that because he didn't blink an eye.
This play is also about identity. People are not what they seem.
Right.
Everyone in this play is not what they seem. M. Butterfly, your celebrated play, again, it's about someone who is not what they seem. Face Value, the title itself, not what they seem. Is it a fair assessment of your work, something that you are interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years now, and I do sometimes look at my own body of work, as it were, and it does seem like certainly identity is the theme, and also the masks that we put on. And how we try to become other people by playing roles, whether that's in the theater or in life.
And this sort of theme that you're interested in, does it just something that has come to you organically and you realize, I'm on to this kind of thing, this interests me in some way, or do you sit down and say the play, I'm going to deal with these issues of masks again?
Yeah, I don't really sit down and go, this is the theme that I'm going to deal with. It just sort of continues to, these are my obsessions, my personal things. I think probably because, I'm a first-generation Chinese American, and I grew up in a period where there weren't as many Asian Americans as there are now, and so that notion of, well, who am I? But I have to say that recently, as I've been traveling to China, has become somewhat more complicated, yeah. Right? Because when I'm in China, I'm clearly an American, right. And then over here, I'm, people, generally accept me as American, but. So
Chinese American.
I'm a Chinese American, so you end up with one foot on in both continents, and makes the search for identity more complicated and interesting.
Where are your parents from?
My father was from Shanghai, and my mother is a Chinese from the Philippines, and they came to the States and met at USC, and that's why I was born and raised in LA.
How did you get interested in theater?
I didn't have any of it growing up. I just, my freshman year in college, I saw some plays and I thought I can probably do that. So I started writing them in my spare time. I found a professor who was willing to take a look at them. He said they were really bad, which they were. And that, I had the desire to write plays, but I didn't actually know anything about the theater. But then that same professor, we sort of, created an independent study thing together. I saw as many plays as I could, read as many plays as I could, and my senior year in college, wrote a play to be done in my dorm called FOB, which a year later was done at the Public Theater here in New York. And then, through a variety of fortuitous circumstances, I ended up getting out of the starting gate pretty early.
A friend of mine was saying, thank God we have a David Henry Hwang play, an Asian actor friend of mine. He said, because we haven't had work since Miss Saigon and Flower Drum Song. I mean, is it some disappointment to you that you have not been followed by other American who happen to be of Asian descent writers?
There are actually a lot of great Asian American playwrights. You don't
just
see
don't
them on Broadway, but
But-
you don't see that many new American plays on Broadway. I mean, this fall being the exception that proves the rule. So that said, what's disappointing to me is that Asian actors don't get brought in more by directors, by casting directors, just for regular roles. You know, when you have a role that's where the ethnicity isn't specified, you could just as easily cast an Asian American actor as anyone else. And they tend not to be seen for those roles. And that, I think, we could easily make more progress in.
Excellent. Well, I just want to give credit to the terrific actress in your play, Chinglish.
Jennifer Lim.
Jennifer Lim. I mean, this is a colossally good performance. Play is called Chinglish at what theater you're at?
We're at the Longacre.
You're at the Longacre, newly refurbished. It looks
Yeah,
great for
$12 million renovation.
for the David Henry Hwang play. Appropriate. Chinglish by our friend David Henry Hwang. Thank you very much for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
Thanks for having me.
I recently assumed control of Ohio signage and now direct all its operations.
现在俄亥俄州招牌设计公司由卡芬诺先生控制。I am sorry, direct what?
All our operations?
Thank you. 而他也是个外科医生。不。
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.